Here today to talk a little bit about trauma and how it's impacted my life and sort of some of the invisible aspects of trauma that people can't see, but that very much affect your life, and how when people can't see them, it can really hurt and then make you feel very alone. Back in 2015, I don't know if any of you would have been aware of this at the time. Some people, if you're paying attention to the news, you might know this, but you might not, because it was not happening here in the United States. But over in West Africa, there was a big outbreak. It's a disease that really just ravages your body. It kills many people. It kills probably about half the people that it infects. It causes failure of all of your organs, and you get very, very, very sick. I work in the medical profession. I'm a physician assistant. And so I went over there to help treat patients that were suffering from this illness, to try to help people heal, and so that not as many people would die. And in the course of trying to help others, I actually got sick myself. So I got Ebola. As soon as they discovered I had a fever, I was immediately in isolation from that moment forward. They actually put me on a plane and they flew me back to the United States, and I was put in a special hospital here. I was put into isolation for an entire month. I had no human contact for a month. I had doctors in these moon suits taking care of me. I was very, very sick. They had to put me on life support. They put me into a medically induced coma. So I was completely unconscious for a lot of this. I had tubes and IVs and things sticking out of me, and catheters. And it was extremely traumatic. Eventually, I finally got better. They were able to take me off of the ventilator. They were able to take me off of life support. And eventually, I was able to leave the hospital and start to learn to be human again. But I had lost everything. I had lost 20 or 30 pounds. I could barely walk. I had to relearn how to walk. Up to that point, I had lived in Houston for about 10 years and had built a life up there and friends, and I had my own apartment and that sort of thing. And then I had to relocate overnight to Dallas and live with my parents because I was going to need a lot of care for a while. I couldn't work. So I didn't even get to go back to my old life. Felt a tremendous sense of being alone because no one had experienced this in the United States. I ended up developing symptoms of what's called post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Up to that point, I had been, a working member of society, but I had extreme difficulty functioning. I had extreme difficulty even navigating the different relationships in my life with family, with friends. At the time I had a girlfriend, and that all of those relationships kind of just disintegrated because nobody could understand me and I couldn't understand anybody, because of the kind of trauma that I'd been through. I felt lost and confused and disoriented, and I didn't know why I was there or what I was doing. I didn't understand why people could so easily go back to their normal life, but I couldn't for some reason. Some of these people had known me growing up, whether it was my own parents or people from my hometown that were still there. And so, I think once, it took a few months, once I regained my weight back, they thought, oh, he's looking normal again. He's fine. And I wasn't fine. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was like, who is Preston? It's like I went into the ICU, one person, and I came out something else, but I didn't know what it was. It's taken a lot of therapy and time and healing, and actually a lot of God in my life to help me begin to feel normal again, but I still don't feel totally normal. I still have what I would call emotional scars from what happens that a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand that. They see me walking and I'm working now. I look normal, but I don't feel that way on the inside because of all the stuff that I've been through. Oh man. I didn't. It's the short answer. I would say for the first 1 to 2 years, I just was in a state of, I was just numb. And I sort of went through the motions, but I didn't even know what I was doing. And I was very emotionally shut down. I couldn't even express myself. I just was like, just like a shell. A year later, I moved out of my house because I finally found a job in Austin, Texas. So I moved to Austin and I started working. Somewhere in the process of working, and this was a good year and a half, 2 years after I'd left the hospital, I just kind of began to feel again for the first time. Then I was just overwhelmed, and I would alternate between crying all the time or having panic attacks or being depressed. Um, I wanted to just, I wanted to find a way to escape my emotions because they were too hard. And these were extremely confused because I was just crying or emotional, and they thought, well, what's your problem? Like, this happened a year ago, this happened 2 years ago, it should be no big deal. And for me, it was like just now processing these things. And so then people really didn't understand, and I felt even more alone. The things I lost were like my sense of self, my sense of security, my sense of safety, my sense of feeling loved and understood, gone. um, my whole identity was gone. And those are things you can't see. You know, if you're just looking at the physical body, you can't tell. But I had had my even my dignity. I mean, I had to have nurses roll me over in bed. I'd have nurses help me go to the bathroom because I literally couldn't do it on myself. So I had lost my dignity. And those are, and when you have those kinds of losses, you actually, there's a grieving process you go through. So I was left to think that there was something deeply wrong with me when there wasn't really. I was just, I had lost so many things. So it's been about 5 years since I left the hospital. In fact, today is 5 years to the day, um, from my first full day out of the hospital, actually. And I would say I've come a long way. I found a therapist that was able to help me quite a bit. I've been able to slowly rebuild my life. I do have a stable job now, and I've been working now for a couple of years. Even some of those friends have begun to slowly understand how traumatic it was. That sort of like time they see how big a deal it was. Um, I have a place to live here in Austin. I have some new friends that I've developed as well. I have a community that's kind of come around me to be supportive. I'm building my life back, but it's still a work in progress. I'm still healing from this, and I may be for a long time, maybe for my whole life. I don't really know, but I know that it so deeply impacted me that I don't think it's fair for someone to say, okay, so now you're done with this. It's like, no, there's layers that still come up, and I have to kind of process those layers. That's a really good question. I got to say that's one of the most insightful questions that anyone's ever asked me. So, congratulations. I think my whole self-esteem was just wiped. And I would say it came like in pieces. Started like with very small practical things. So I think when I was relearning how to walk, and the physical therapist was helping me, I mean, literally one step at a time over several years. You know, was first getting sort of the physical aspects back of, you know, learning how to walk and learning how to eat and learning how to do those things again. And then eventually there were, when I was able to restart work, and that piece kind of came back. But the self-esteem kind of came in pieces and layers. It wasn't all at once. I didn't deal with it very well. Early on, I would get angry. I would lash out. I would just, I would cut people off or push people away because there was so much misunderstanding. And I think over time, the way I'm dealing with it is sort of coming to a place where, and sort of trying to accept the fact that the only person that's probably ever going to understand is God. I've learned to set boundaries. Like there's certain people I just can't let into this part of my life because they don't even show a willingness to try to understand. So I don't let them in. There's other people that even though they don't understand, they show a willingness to try, and they show a willingness to even just listen to me. And like my pastor said to me today, he said, Preston, I don't fully understand, but I want to stand with you in this. And that was really comforting to me. Some of it is learning to accept that very few people can understand, setting boundaries where necessary, and then knowing that my Heavenly Father does understand, and kind of giving myself that validation. You'll probably have an intuitive sense. Like God's given you a heart and a mind, and you'll probably know just kind of in your own spirit and your own soul, you'll be able to sense probably how receptive someone else is and a little bit of where they're at. And you'll probably have an intuitive sense of, okay, this feels like a safe person, or it doesn't. That's something that's kind of in your own soul. So I would probably say, pay attention to what's going on inside of you, because it's worth listening to. Like you're worth it. Your internal world is worth paying attention to. That's what I had to learn, was because for the first couple of years, I discounted my own experience. I assumed that everyone else was right and I was wrong. And that was not true. My internal experience was very valid, and the losses that I'd experienced were very valid. And I had to learn how to listen to my voice. So I do. I mean, I have a therapist, and so that helps me cope, because it helps me to have somebody to process these things with. I journal. I like to write, so I do some writing. I also, and some of this has to do with the physical aspect, but because the kind of trauma I went through just disconnected me from my body so dramatically. I was like, almost had an out of body experience. I actually joined a martial arts gym because that helps me. The movement of that and the expression of the energy inside of me gets me back in touch with my body, and just the spatial awareness that I even lost through a lot of that. So yeah, journaling, therapist, martial arts. Being part of a church community has been helpful for me, just having an outlet for my faith and my spirituality. And then being in nature. I love being in nature, and that just helps me feel, it's healing for me. It helps me to feel connected again. It kind of grounds me. So I'll go for hikes out in the woods and things like that. That's just kind of part of who I am. So those are the things that I think have helped me to cope. Where I was going to church at the time, I had to stop going to church there because they didn't have any understanding of trauma. And after I left there, I was tempted to run away, but I also knew, I don't know, somewhere in my soul and spirit, that there was really nowhere else to run to. I still ended up running to God, but what I had to do, I had to find a different faith community that had an understanding of trauma. See, I grew up with a faith, or a sort of a version of faith, that I think was very sterile, and it didn't talk much about entering into the sufferings of Christ. It was a very Americanized sort of gospel. And I think through this whole ordeal I've been through and the trauma I've been through, it's probably allowed me to enter into those sufferings of Christ. I think it's Isaiah 53. It says, by his stripes we are healed, or by his wounds we are healed. And so his death on the cross, Good Friday, is part of what opens the door for my healing, because he paid for even the trauma that I've been through. And he understands trauma more than anybody else.